folks. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, download our free app, and stream all of our live local programming, including the Jim Parisi Show, Solomon on Blast, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's great to reconnect with a friend of the program, a melodic improviser who was playing polyrhythms on his school desk when he was coming up, hitting the Latin clubs, and ultimately has really made a lifetime of music on his palette. He continues to progress and move forward while being critical when it needs to be. Al Di Meola, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
You know, someone mentioned to me about you and Beyonce. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle about that. Can you talk about that?
You mean my relationship with her?
I mean, there was some news made in reference, I guess. I'm unfamiliar with it. If you don't want to talk about it, I don't care. I mean, someone brought it up.
No. There really is nothing. I was just kidding.
Okay.
No,
cool.
There's nothing with me and Beyonce.
Let me ask you something. Can you talk about when we last talked about the quintet that you had coming to Tucson? Could you talk about how good that tour was? Did it meet your expectations? Because you were pretty primed about it when we talked.
What, the last electric group, you mean?
Yeah, there was marimba and drums.
Oh yeah. Well, it was the first time we had resurrected that the early music from Elegant Gypsy and Casino in particular, and I was really psyched to do that again. And that was the first time we played that music in that area in maybe more than 20 years. So it was a cool thing to do. And we're back out doing it again. We're going to start in February again and do an actual 40th anniversary of that.
So, and that's coming up in a month.
Yeah, that comes up in February, early February, starting in North Carolina. Then we head down through South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and then scoot over to Texas and then shoot up towards the Northeast, going into Canada a bit.
So obviously, I mean, is it one of those bands? I mean, can you talk about the philosophy, your philosophy as it relates to never playing the same song once? And the idea there is that, you have a sketch of a tune, you have these tunes that you haven't, it's the 40-year anniversary, but, again, it never is the same once. Can you talk about that?
Well, the improvisation parts are always different. And depending on which percentage the improvisation makes up, you can pretty much assure that the sections that are designated for improv will absolutely be different each night. The written parts will pretty much be the same. And I hold in high regard composition, because I think it's the composition that holds one's attention. There's plenty of great players that are mind-blowing at playing and improvising, but it's really the composition and the quality of it that is going to keep people interested in what's going on, So we the composition part stays the same, and the improv varies from night to night.
I was just curious about if because I was interviewing Rick Marotta, and he was talking about playing with this cat who, would go off for 15 or 20 minute solos, and he knew he was a great player in the studios, but the guy wanted to play live gigs with him, and he said, I'm cool with that, and we can rehearse it, but can you just cut it down, say what you need to say in a couple of minutes, and let's play 25 songs. And
right.
So they rehearse, and Rick's feeling great about it. And He's fired
When he
up.
gets out there, he solos for 25 minutes.
Yeah, okay, so that's it, man. So you're talking about composition. Have you always been somebody who's prided themselves on being able to say what you need to say in a short period of time?
Say what you need to say and get the heck out of that solo. It's the solos that bore the shit out of people.
I agree. Okay, so
tremendously.
Okay, but I mean, I'm in the minority. But can you talk about how you learned to not just drift away and that you weren't just stop repeating lines and stop repeating this stuff. Just rip it in 15 seconds or 20 seconds.
Well, maybe a little longer, but the thing is, it's it's an instinct I have of when to move on, and it's a virtue to have that instinct that is so lacking in so many fusion or jazz musicians that think that it is true for the most part. I mean, the soloing is like the big deal, but the audiences have dwindled down to almost zero. The audiences are really, really small for musicians that think that improvisation is going to expand or hold on to an audience. An audience needs to sink their teeth into some quality, and the quality is going to come from in the way of composition. It's what holds you there. It's what you connect with. The improvisation is something that should be included within, but not, let's say, overrides the dominance of the composition. And that's just my strong philosophy. And I think a lot of guys in my band also have a sense of, when enough is enough.
No, I think it's legitimate. I mean, can you talk about? Have the idea is that you look at the band that you started with, Return to Forever. It was just melodic improvisation throughout the whole thing, and our audiences have changed over time. Is it as simple to say that it is merely an attention span thing? You believe that they've?
Oh yeah, I mean we're so inundated with the super speed of new technology, the networking possibilities, the amount of apps that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Our attention spans have grown a lot shorter. If you go back as far as even the 60s into the 70s, I mean, audiences will listen to solos that went on for 15 minutes. Sometimes enhanced by the use of taking drugs, so that the whole experience was that much even greater.
Right.
But
right.
But today people are looking at their phones, they're texting, it's changed. It's not the days of when you can have audiences fully engaged. If they're not taking a picture of you with their phone, or they're looking at their phone, or they're sending a message, or they're FaceTiming, whatever. So, and this happens in the studio as well. The studio is virtually impossible to make as great a record as we used to make in the past. And that goes for everybody, not just me, everyone. Because we're all dealing not only with limited budgets, because the record industry has collapsed, and it's dominated by really, really crap stuff.
Right.
Really crap stuff, and that means rap, and that means, the big production Beyonce type records that no one buys. I don't know who the hell buys that stuff. But anyway, then you have, you have just guys that go in the studio. This is the biggest problem. And after they cut a track, everyone's out in the hallway checking their messages, because no one could stay disconnected from the new technology for too long. So what that means is you have a tremendous lack of attention span and focus on the new product that you're making, whether it's a product you're making for someone else that you should be totally involved with, or your own product. You don't have the cohesiveness that we had going back to the 70s and 80s, we would tell the receptionist to turn off that one phone in the control room. And that was the only phone. So, if someone's wife or brother or manager called, they would have to wait. They were on a list because we were busy making a record. So the focus was so good. Now, when you go back and you listen to those old records, they sound great. They're greater than new stuff that comes out.
Oh, I mean, I want to read, Leland Sklar, the bass player?
Mm-hmm.
So this is something I transcribed. I wanted to read you this, and then I want you to just riff on it. He said, I really find this, especially with vocalists today, when you're doing projects, you see a guy or a girl come in and they're sitting there doing 30 vocals, and then they're going to sit and comp this whole thing together and run it through auto-tune, then do some correcting. Right. If it's not good enough, they'll bring in a studio singer to ghost some of it just to make it sound a little bit better. I think to myself, man, when James Taylor, Jackson Browne, or Linda Ronstadt would walk into the studio back in those days, you'd put a mic in front of them and they'd sit and sing it from top to bottom. It was incredible. There might be a fix or two. But, I mean, the point was, it wasn't about hiring a second engineer who's going to take all the tracks after you're finished cutting them down and sit there and tweak them. Why is there this obsession with tweaking everything now? I mean, why have we gotten so far away from just...
Because we can get away with, graduating in 7th grade.
What do you mean by that?
You don't have to be that great.
Right.
You don't have to be that schooled. You don't have to be that polished. You don't have to be. You better have the looks. I mean, if we're talking about pop music, you got to have the looks. You got to have a gimmick. I see a lot of subpar singers, subpar players. If they have the look and they have the gimmick, they can get away with 7th grade. You know what I mean? And then you go in and you find auto-tune this stuff and try 50 takes or whatever, and you make the composite of all the takes, and then there's so many things you can do with Pro Tools that it could take you 5 years to make a record. That's the problem with Pro Tools. It's so, there's so many variables and tricks that you could do that you're forever trying those tricks, and I personally don't like the new school, and it's not new anymore, but I much prefer the way we used to do it. I used to like to just use faders, and if I needed more volume, I just push the fader. Now it's like a screen coming down, and you got to make 5 or 6 different moves just to get the volume to go up, a little bit or down. Crazy.
Is it? I mean, and there's no way for you to push to do something different than that. I mean, did you just go into a place with with what you want and more of a spare setup and just do what you used to do? I mean, is it just that much harder because we have the technology? Are you part of that? Are you sucked into it as well?
Well, it's to a certain degree, because a lot of engineers, love to work with Pro Tools. It's the industry standard.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of forced to work with them, and there's fewer studios that have any kind of analog abilities. That's almost finished. Although I did use a similar analog recording 8-track as the Beatles had used when I went to Abbey Road, because I wanted to see what it was like. And I wanted to hear sound-wise how it compared to Pro Tools. So we did an A/B, and I found that the 8-track just completely blew away the Pro Tools. So why are we going to this new technology? It's because the variables and what you could do with Pro Tools is staggering. But it could take you forever to make a record.
Well,
and then you add in the fact that there's less focus from the musicians, because everybody's constantly in between takes, or even sometimes during takes, checking their voicemails or their emails, and the focus factor is not the same.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm surprised you even tolerate that with cats if it's your record. I'm just surprised.
Well, I thought about if I do another group recording,
right,
large production, that I have a contract where everybody has to leave their phones.
I love it. I do.
In the hotel.
I would totally do, or just shut them down. Because
Well, the problem is they'll say they'll do it, and then they won't do it. When you think about it, will they really leave their phone somewhere else and shut it down? No. I mean, they'll say yes, and then they'll be sneaking left and right. It's kind of like they're hiding drugs or something.
Let me ask you a question, though. I mean, explain to the audience and myself, because it's really important. You talk about focus. And that was a great band as well, you know. And it's like the focus in the studio. With that, let's just say you had this all these incredibly idiosavantish players. They signed the contract. They left the phones in the room. What is it about within the space of not playing and just in the studio? How does that help the recording session?
If they didn't have it.
What I'm saying is, go back to when you had one landline, turn it off, and it was Stanley, Lenny, and you and Chick. I mean, what's going on in between the takes that allows for the focus to get even more palpable?
Well, we're listening to the takes. We're listening to how we can make it better. We're listening. We're practicing.
Yeah.
You know, we're maybe there's a passage is not clean or something, and we want to work on getting it better, or we talk about the arrangement, or we're total focus in on exactly what we're there to do. That doesn't happen at all anymore. Maybe a slight tiny percentage of that, because people are so wound up into their phones and their computers that they drag all their crap with them, and you just see them. You see the guys on the drum stool checking his emails, you know, instead of practicing his chart. I mean, not to say that, you know, they only do that, but it's when you get diverted to these new forms of technology and media and things that get thrown at us, it just keeps, you know, sidetracking, you know, our thoughts, and we can't totally focus on making something better, and that's what it was. Those records, you know, and I can go to anything from the 60s, 70s, man, even into the 80s. You can hear when those records are played how much focus went in to making those records so great. Not to mention they had a much bigger budget.
Well, they did, and I think I'm gonna play you an audio clip here. I'm not you might know you'll probably know who it is, but I'm more interested in you thinking about what's going on back there.
Oh, with me?
Yeah.
Here?
It sounded like, you know, like some sort of walrus noise or something. You were zipping something up. I want you to listen to this person talking, and then I want you to think about any experience that you might have had along these lines, because I think it also has to do with the idea that it is about budgets and it's about distractions, but it's also about the ability to actually have work. And so just take a listen to this, and we'll come back and talk about it.
So I was coming out of Atlantic. I had just done some session. I forgot what it was, and I was at I was waiting for the elevator to come, and Dr. John and Arif Martin come out of this mix room. They were mixing that record, was what happened. And they saw me standing in the hall, and apparently they forgot to put a solo on there. So they were getting ready to mix the song, and then when they got to that section, they realized that there wasn't a solo. And if I'm not mistaken, it was going to be a sax solo, not a guitar solo. But they came out because Dr. John was only in town for a while, and they had to finish mixing the record. So I was standing at the elevator. I said, "Oh, Spinoza, you got a minute? Could you come in and throw a solo on this song?" And I just said, well, actually, I was on my way to a jingle date. At this point, I was mostly doing commercials, and even the recording scene was changing a little bit. And I was on my way I had like 20 minutes to get someplace, those are the days where you could jump in a cab in New York and actually get someplace.
Exactly, right.
I had like 20 minutes, and I said, listen, I got 20 minutes. I said, oh, come on in, you'll hear it, let's go. So I go into this little mix room. It wasn't even the big recording studio. And there was a little Fender amp in there, so they said, just plug in here. They threw a mic on it. I plugged in. They keyed it up right to where the solo was, because so I never heard the whole song. They keyed it up. And they said, "You'll hear it. It's in the key E flat. Give me like a blues kind of solo." So I took the guitar out of the case. I had it in a soft gig bag. I took it out, and I remembered that my G string was like out of tune because the tuning pegs had gotten moved while it was in the case. I wasn't really even tuned up yet. So I said, "Well, let me hear it, and I'll play along." And I'll see, and then I'll do a take of it. I got to go. They said, fine. So I put the headphones on. and I played that solo. And then and one of the notes that to me this day is hard for me to listen to, I felt like I overbent it to some note I wasn't trying to bend it to because I thought the string was out of tune. I was messing around. So then I tuned up. I said, all right, let me try one. And they said, no, that's it. It's magic.
All right. Well, he said Spinoza. That's David Spinoza. The session was right place, wrong time. The meters were the rhythm section on that, but they called him in. Did that ever happen to you in the sense? Here's the bottom line. Spinoza is all he's thinking about is getting to the jingle after a date, and they pull him in, and he rips. He actually throws a clunker, plays a wrong note, but it turns out to be a legendary solo. And I'm like, Di Meola was so entrenched, early on. I mean, it just that. Did you have opportunity? Did anything like that happen? That spontaneous thing where you had no time to think, you just went in and you wound up cooking on somebody's record?
Well, I think I didn't do a lot of sessions, so I don't have a lot to draw from. Except the Paul Simon record and some work with Stevie Wynwood. But I do remember our first take with Paco de Lucia, which turned out to be Mediterranean Sundance. Whereas the first day he came in, not speaking a word of English, we flew him over from Spain. He arrives at Electric Lady, very nervous and a little tense as well because he had never been out of the comfort zone of his flamenco world, and here he was in New York with something very out of the context, and he couldn't feel comfortable unless somebody had gotten him some smoke, some weed,
little bud, yeah.
So
that's great. That's all right.
So the first day, we kind of pushed off to the next day so he can get some rest. And then the second day, he had, my friend got what he needed, and it was the first take. It was just pure magic. Both of us was totally on. We didn't have to do like 5 or 6 or 7 takes or splice them together and this and that. It was like, wow. And everybody in the control room was just waving their hands like, oh, we got it. Oh, my God, we got it. And at the end, you can actually hear Paco go,
Wait,
we left that in.
Yeah. Wait, so this was on Elegant Gypsy?
Elegant Gypsy.
77. Yeah. So this is the year before I was born. Di Meola.
40 years ago.
Unbelievable. The Elegant Gypsy, and he comes in, he mellows out, and you guys just. It was just.
Yeah, it was the first take.
Oh my God! That's the stuff I live for, man. That's the magic of. I guess that's the magic of music, I mean, did you actually? I mean, how did you guys cultivate your relationship from there? Especially, that was the other question. Is I've talked to McLaughlin. When did you and McLaughlin first start to hang?
Well, we were kind of label mates. We didn't really. We really didn't hang out or anything. I mean, it was admirable. He was at the forefront of the whole thing. But then, after Mahavishnu, Return to Forever remained, and then I signed with Columbia, same label, the same day. We signed my contract was wonderful, and Return to Forever was really big, and. A lot of attention went to me on the label, and there was a little bit of jealousy there. But then some years later, big time.
Yeah, right.
And then some years later, I was approached by an impresario from London, who was just this young guy who was very, very eager and had great foresight to imagine this. Guitar trio. Actually, it wasn't John at first. It was Leo Kotke, myself, and Paco. And strangely enough, I was a fan of Leo Kotke, so I was like, yeah, great, wow.
Well, I didn't. This is amazing. It was originally you and Leo and Paco were the trio.
Yeah. Now I know it didn't make a lot of sense, even though I was kind of a fan of that.
Sure.
For a minute.
Yeah.
For a minute there back when I was in like 16 or whatever, and and then when it got closer to us getting together, this impresario, whose name is Barry Marshall, who now handles all of McCartney stuff in the whole world. He started with us, believe it or not. Now he's like making zillions of dollars. But anyway, he says, hey, I got another idea. What about McLaughlin for the trio? And I said, well, man, if you get John, then you're going to have a very powerful trio, with Paco there, who's already got a huge buzz. And the fact that Mediterranean Sundance 3 years ago was a hit. Mm-hmm. That was like a hit single. Sold millions of records. So we had this big interest in Paco. John was already, very well known. And then I was like the new kid on the block that was at the height of my career, in that world of electric music. And I just knew it was going to be a smash. Never knew it would be as big as it became, because we wound up selling 7 million records of Friday Night in San Francisco. Still a big record.
I mean, so you can honestly say at that point you hadn't really even, McLaughlin showed up, and that was really, aside from being on the same label, you had not really interacted with him before that.
No.
So, did you guys hit it off? Because he's cosmic individual. So are you, but you guys are, he's across the Atlantic. I would love you to talk about that. Not even that night. That night got pressed on record and it was magical. But you guys did plenty of albums, plenty of live gigs, and I wanted you to talk. Do you think that might have been, your ears were still growing at that point? Do you think you still had room to?
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about how you guys, the call and response of 3 acoustic guitars on stage, and ultimately for cats out there today, like you said in our last interview, like, I come to the United States, people want me to strap on that electric, and in Europe it's kind of more open-minded and you can kind of do your thing. But can you talk about how you can still generate output without an electric guitar?
Well, I found out that you could. I found out that the power of acoustic guitar was on a par, with electric. The reactions we were getting from the audience were staggering, and it showed me at the tender age of probably 21 that I could have a very long future playing acoustic music and play until the latest age that I don't even want to mention, with acoustic. But I cannot envision, in any case, playing electric guitar like a Jeff Beck when he becomes 85 years old and he's up there with Marshalls and a Strat is going to not only look ridiculous, but it could also sound ridiculous.
Exactly.
Because it's just, there's wear and tear on your hearing. Like anyone that's played electric guitar will eventually lose, parts of their hearing. And some of them will get tinnitus. I know John's almost completely deaf in one ear. Larry Coryell's deaf in one ear. I've lost some quality hearing. But I also, unfortunately, I got worse than them. I have tinnitus.
Yeah, that means you have is constant screaming in the ears?
Yeah, screaming at the loudest level you can imagine, 24/7.
Al,
nothing you can do. Nothing you can do about it.
Listen, I'm doing a film documentary on Stan Getz. He was about as manic depressive, and he was out of his mind. But how do you? That kind of screaming. How have you dealt with it, man? Like, how do you deal with that?
There's some rough times. Let's put it that way.
Knowing that you have to wake up every morning.
Focus on it.
Yeah.
It's like if you walk into the kitchen, you focus on the refrigerator motor. You could hear it going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But plenty of times you go into the kitchen and you don't focus on it. You don't even know it's doing that. But if you focus on it, you could hear it. So with tinnitus, unfortunately, it's a lot more aggravated than what I just said. it's there all the time screaming, and you just got to try to, focus your attention on other things. That's the only thing a doctor will tell you. Can you imagine? There's nothing else.
I mean, yeah.
To me, I mean, they're working on things. I mean, there's all kinds of research all over the world, mind you. But we're far from it. Might not see it in this lifetime because it has little to do with the ears itself. It has a lot to do with the brain.
Right. This is no joke. I mean, I am very fast. I mean, because if you have you worked on mind control, or is it something that you're able to? I understand the hum of the refrigerator and stuff. Just for me, having sort of ruminating thoughts, I can't even imagine. I mean, on the bandstand, does it affect you on the bandstand at all, or are you able to?
Well, the louder the sounds that surround me, the less it bothers me.
Interesting.
The quiet, the quiet situations are where you tend to have a hard time not focusing, because it's right there. As I talk to you, I hear screaming.
I hope. Yeah. Let me know if I'm talking too loud. The last thing I want to do is make.
No.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Listening to music through headphones, you should be at a lower volume. Kind of my practice. But most other people listen really loud, especially younger people listen at crazy volumes, not realizing that 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 will develop tinnitus as a result of what they're doing, pretty much 100% for sure. And almost all of them will have a hearing loss at a much earlier stage.
Talking to Al Di Meola here on the Jake Feinberg Show, and I really, this is important for me. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that you had collaborated with Stomu Yamashita, and and what I am trying to figure out here chronologically is, when I talked to Lenny White, he was in Azteca in '73. This is before you joined Return to Forever, and then Journey wanted him to come aboard, but Chick wanted him for Return to Forever. At the same time, the community of San Francisco was so bubbling over that Michael Shreve they were all hanging together. And now I know you. So I want you to talk. This is the question: how did this whole collaboration come about? And then number two, could you talk about the drumming, the style, the different drumming styles of Lenny White and Michael Shreve?
Well, I thought, as a teenager growing up and going to Santana shows at the Fillmore East, Michael was, I thought, really brilliant drummer. I thought he did very well in Santana, and his solos were mind-blowing, I thought.
Really?
At that time.
Yeah.
I know he didn't come from so much of a jazz background, or let's say even was schooled in reading. So he may have had a hard time, with playing long charts of, the kind of music that I started with. But, he was really great for that band, and I think he left prematurely. He should have stayed with Santana a lot longer. I know Michael. I see him every time I go to Seattle.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you?
We hang it.
I just want to make sure, because I love to connect you guys, with these stories, because Michael was like a big band freak at San Mateo College. You're telling me the charts that you were even more complicated, that he couldn't read them? I thought he was kind of an able reader.
Well, I don't know if he was a reader like Steve Gadd. I mean, very few are.
Well, Gadd. I mean, yeah. No, anyway, I just dig this stuff. Because he was bringing the big band, but he was. I mean, in the early '70s, they were obsessed with Joe Beam and the Brazilian stuff, and and he was doing.
I know. When I went to Michael's house when I first joined RTF, I went over to Michael's house with Lenny, and amazing house, way up high on a cliff overlooking San Francisco. I was really impressed. and I could see he had pictures of a lot of jazz drummers up there. So those guys were like his idols, like Elvin Jones, and,
Sure.
people like that. Art Blakey. So even though I think his background was more rock, I think he had he had these jazz icons like Santana. Carlos is a guy. He's always boasting about Miles and John Coltrane and all, but he can't play like
no.
that.
He's so envious. He wants to be a jazzer so bad, but he can't.
Yeah.
I dig. So you went. So you and Lenny went to Michael's house, and then how did the because he was it occurred to me, I just found Go for it's an album that you can find pretty easily, and I'm like, Meola's on this, and it's just, I mean, can you talk about how that session came together?
Well, the first one with Michael on the cover.
I think it's called. Well, there's and there's a couple here. The one with Go with Wynwood.
Oh, with Wynwood. Okay, so there's two with Wynwood. One was a studio recording. That was the first one, and then soon thereafter there was a live double album. And
wow,
when I got called, what was funny was when I was going to Berklee School of Music, we were all listening to Stomy Yamashita as well, Red Buddha Theater, and which was pretty obscure stuff. We were really into kind of avant-garde too.
What was the name? I'm going to have to look at that. What was the name of that? What did you just say? Red what?
Red Buddha Theater.
Oh man, this is classic. All right, continue.
Yeah, and this was, Stomy Yamashita was this high society. It seemed like, dressed completely mod for the time. Whatever the wildest clothes were. He was like, related. He was like Nigel Kennedy is to classical music, or Vanessa Mae. They're very into being very different in avant-garde and stylish.
Wow.
Outside of the classical, sterile world, and so he was this wild character in an avant-garde classical setting that was very well known on even a pop level. So evidently he was doing very, very, I would say, what's the word? He's just like innovative, very innovative things in that world. They got the attention of the rock world. So when I got the call, and I forget who called me, to join this ensemble, because it was right after the breakup of RTF. Not a too happy time, because we disbanded far too prematurely. But I get this call to join this ensemble of Michael Shreve, Klaus Schultz from Tangerine Dream, Phil Manzanera from Roxy Music, Stomy Yamashita's actually the head of the whole thing, kind of the leader, and it's his brainchild. Stevie Wynwood. When I heard Stevie Wynwood, I said, "Oh my God!" I mean, it was only 2 or 3 years ago. I was in, my local neighborhood garage, my friend's garage, playing Dear Mr. Fantasy, going to see Traffic in New York. It was only a few years before that.
Unbelievable.
So it was, the thought of it was like, oh my God, I'm playing with Michael Shreve and Stevie Wynwood. This is too much. It's just too much. So I remember I arrived in London, walked into Island Studios, and Stevie was already in the record room, not the control room, and he was singing, and I just got chills, man. It's like, oh, that voice. He had a great voice then. He's got a great voice now. I mean, one of the great voices of rock.
It's a transcendent voice, and it allows you to I'm looking at the album, and I've seen it around a million times. I will never pass this album up again. I cannot wait to get my hands on this album again, because I don't think I was even aware you were on this album. The Italian pressing with a pack of cigarettes on there. So
that one. That's the live album.
Yeah, exactly. The live one is the one you just tipped me off to. Is the double from somewhere in France. But anyway,
yeah, it's in Paris at the Palais de Sport. So after that record came out, a little time went by. The first record, that is.
Yes.
And then I remember I had made Elegant Gypsy, and a big tour was planned with Elegant Gypsy, featuring that record with my band, and Weather Report with Heavy Weather. We were going to do a co-bill, heavily sponsored and promoted up the yin yang from CBS. And then they called me and wanted me to tour with them. So I was able to do just a couple of gigs. Then I had to get back to the States to support my record. But the gigs that I did with them, that I sort of was the musical director of, because everybody was doing 10 tons of cocaine. So I was the only one to get everybody to really focus on rehearsal, because everybody's running to the bathroom every second.
Just today has technology replaced cocaine today? I mean, is that back then everyone's running to the bathroom for coke? I mean, how were you supposed to? Anyway,
that's a good analogy. I think there's a lot of similarity there. It's just that the focus factor is not the same. And it was hard for those guys to focus because there was so much of this stuff going around. They were all doing it. But miraculously, we came together enough so that we were able to play at the prestigious Royal Albert Hall in London to a sold-out audience. I think McCartney was there. I think Jimmy Page was there. These are just rumors that I had heard. But what was so cool about it was, the nature of the music was great. The players, the interesting mix of players made it interesting. We had laser lights. We had ballet going on with the music. It was like a full multimedia show that really kind of was never seen before. So this guy's vision, Stomy Amashita, was it was his thing. It was it's what he saw. So we took it to London. Was great. Oh my God, what a magic time that was. And then we went to Paris, and we did that big thing at Palais de Sport. But then I had to leave, unfortunately, and then they continued to tour. And there was a third record too. It's called Go To. And unfortunately, Stevie didn't make it, and there was a different singer on it, but pretty much the same other people.
Unbelievable. So, I'm obsessed with this whole thing also because you talk about, we were talking earlier about people just wanking on stage for 16-minute solos and stuff. And one thing about, I've just talked to so many dudes that are not considered jazz drummers, but they might have, like cats like Shreve or Densmore, Keltner, and Gadd, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this because so many of those guys grew up listening to those master drummers, the Kenny Clarks and the Mickey Rokers and the Elvin Joneses and Max Roach. And here's the thing: is that the bass drum, double bass drums, were not at all prevalent at that time to keep in keeping time. It was used for rebound. It was used for other things, but those cats were dancing on the cymbals. And I wanted you to just talk about the idea of, do you like drummers who are less reliant on the bass drum for keeping time? To me, that's one of the things about music now that I can't hear anything anymore because it sounds like machine gun fire from the bass drums. And those cats all those rock drummers, all those guys who wound up as studio icons, Keltner just wanted to be Philly Joe Jones. And those, when I listen to those records, you can hear those drummers' distinctive styles. It's my non-musician opinion that they were keeping time on the cymbals. But I just wanted you to talk about the kinds of drummers you ultimately, going back to the Lenny White, Shreve, comparing them, but also like with drummers now. Do you like drummers?
Well, yeah. You could hear in Lenny's style that he was totally influenced by Tony Williams. You could hear a little bit more of Buddy Rich and Steve Gadd. It's tough. The drummer you mentioned, was Keltner, you said?
Yeah, Keltner, yeah.
If he's making a pop record, you just, you can only bring so much of your influence in. that pocket's got to be there with the bass drum and the snare, and he may like to play like Philly Joe, but it's not going to be suited for that particular track for James Taylor or whoever. So little traces of it might show through, but look at Steve Gadd. I think he played drums when he was in the military or something. When he does that military role stuff, I get chills. It's so heartfelt. Steve Gadd to me inspired my guitar playing. I mean, that's how great I feel his influence was.
He said to me, in our second interview, he goes, I grew up listening to jazz before I was into R&B. The guys who I listened to when I first started out were using cymbals all the time. He goes, I use cymbals depending on the kind of music I'm playing. If it's more of a funk thing, it might be more of a closed hi-hat. If it's jazz or straight ahead time, I go to the ride cymbal. A lot of the guys at the beat. A lot of the guys at the beat.
See, I respect that approach.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you get a lot of drummers who are cymbal heavy. They're always crashing the cymbals, and that's not for my taste. In fact, when I direct my band and I'm in these brutal rehearsals that I'm known for, I really, the drummer has to limit his smashing of the cymbals. I'm more of, someone that wants to, and also hi-hat, get off the hi-hat, so utilizing the drums more, and then, orchestrating the music is very important, and syncopation and knowing when to go to the ride cymbal so that the song rises at a certain point. But I know Lenny he's a big time cymbal crasher, but he comes from a Tony Williams school. So everybody's got their own stamp and their own influences, and to what degree they let that influence come in depends on what they feel. So everybody's got their own thing, which is why it's all beautiful.
I dig. I think it's like it's fascinating for me because rest in peace, Joe Sample and Reggie Workman. They both told me that with younger drummers, they said drummers could even be in their 50s, and they don't know how to use the cymbals as colors. Like you were talking about, they're bashing them like crazy. But the idea of actually using them tastefully. Workman said he'd go see a 45-minute set of quote-unquote jazz now, and the drummer doesn't use the cymbals once, doesn't touch the cymbals. It's like either they've been made to just bash on, but nothing else. And you listen to some of that stuff that was going on with, I'm thinking like Max Roach and, some of that burning stuff, burning jazz that was going on in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. People were dancing on those cymbals. It wasn't just this ridiculous amount of machine gun fire. Do you have a go-to drummer, or you definitely tend to go through go through a lot of different drummers?
I go through a lot of different ones, but if I get a guy that works for a tour, then I like to try to stick with him, because so much of what I kind of tell them what I want is it amounts to tons and tons of hours and days. So there's a lot of working out parts. You don't just change a drummer and you allow the drummer to do what they want. That would be a recipe for disaster. Not in this highly arranged and written music. Do you let a drummer just do exactly what he wants to do? Because it's all very specific. You have a percussionist playing, you have a drummer playing, everyone's playing a counter rhythm. It's all syncopated, and it's all counterpointed. So the freedom will come in places where there is freedom, but if you don't get the actual parts down, which might feel to some of these guys unorthodox at first, but they get it. They all kind of learn something from the rehearsals, I believe.
Can you talk, just going back to what you said about how has Steve influenced your guitar playing?
No one has a better sense of unbelievable innate built-in clock. He's got an amazing inner metronome that in his feel, even with the most simple drum groove, is somehow, for some reason, better than almost anyone. All drummers will probably agree to that. He just has an amazing ability to make a simple groove exciting. Now that's rare. Usually, you're going to excite somebody, you're going to display a flurry of rolls.
Chops, yeah, right.
Chop City to impress. This guy could just go. That is like, what the fuck? It is so exciting.
Right, but as he says, he goes
mind blowing.
Yeah,
it's just a simple roll of the snare, and it's just so locked in a time, and without him following any kind of sense of click track or anything. And my God, I remember making the third record. Those were heavy drug and alcohol periods for a lot of those session guys. They were working so much, and it was the era of a lot of bad stuff. And man, we had to pick Steve up from the chair and the control room. Just pick him up, two people. His head was to the side. He was completely dead.
Wow.
And it was just a mess. And we didn't even know if we were going to be able to sit on the stool without falling off. And I counted off the song, and make a long story short. And I know he had my chart that I wrote out for him, and he always liked to tape the chart along a number of cymbal stands, instead of having it on a music stand where he's looking to the side. So he's looking, at it straight.
Sure.
So he has taped across the cymbal stands, and I count this thing off, and it happened to have been Egyptian Danza and whatever the Casino Suite. And oh my God, I just counted off, and it was lock solid, without a click track.
Unreal. And he was totally out of his mind.
Everybody was completely blown away. Like, what the hell? That was the same guy we put on the drums,
That we can. Are you? Can you? You were not part of this drug frenzy. You referred back to the.
No, I was not really. I wasn't into it. I was really focused on the music.
I dig, man. No, I really want. This is very important because you talked about with this the Yamashita, Wynwood.
I was a little green to the whole drug scene, and I wasn't really. First of all, I never smoked cigarettes, so I wasn't really into smoking pot. I had nothing against people doing it, mind, but I had not yet known anything about this, the whole coke world, which had exploded and everyone was doing. So luckily, I stayed focused for a very long time, many records, without having to indulge,
Last time you told me in a prophetic fashion, you said, I really adapted to European life and the success I had over there. I saw the future being Europe.
Yeah.
So, where is that still the case? I find it ironic as we enter Trump Nation today, and this swing towards right-wing leadership in all over Europe too. I wonder where you see the future of, where the vocabulary of all or any music can be expanded now. Where do you see the hotbed of activity now in this interconnected world?
Hotbed. It's really hard to say. It's we're entering into a whole new phase of life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You cannot say for the better. I mean, it's a far more scarier time, with knowing that technology has improved to the degree that it has, and not only in things that we use every day, but also in weaponry. When we hear on a weekly basis about nuclear weapons reaching America from North Korea, or Iran getting whatever $500 billion, trillion, whatever it was, for what? And then
right, just to slow down the process of making them.
Are we gonna? At what point does someone get mad enough to start using this weaponry? And so, where is it safe right now? Is the question.
Right.
It used to be for me, because I had a place in Germany. Germany was tremendously safe. My God, walk around there any time of the day or night and not worry. In America, not quite the same. This is a very violent country. People love their guns.
They do.
And for the vast majority, the guns that are being used are by the bad guy to kill, a lot of innocent people, unfortunately. So you have a very violent country. You got to stay on your toes here. The record industry is kaput. So the live thing has gone up. Thank God that we hope that continues, and you pray and hope that there's not a war that silences even live shows because of a war breaking out. God forbid. But
unfortunately, I see the most vulnerable places being the areas that cowardly terrorists that get their hands on a dirty bomb will attack. That's, this was unthinkable one time. I think the thing that bothers me most about Trump is that all it takes is some cat or a couple disgruntled cats to go in and throw a dirty bomb into the market, the fish market in Seattle. And maybe it does minimal damage, but just because they drew first blood, we're going to come back and, we'll be in the middle of a nuclear holocaust, because I don't think this guy I think he wants to get even and vengeance. And I think that's the scariest part. When you have somebody who's willing to do that and almost uncurious about the consequences, that's pretty intense. So, this is, because we could.
This is Twilight Zone.
It is,
This is Twilight Zone. I'm telling you, I can't. I'm watching this right now. I cannot believe this is happening.
I think everybody. Yeah, I wrote a little bit of a manifesto last night. I just said, cut your cable. I've cut mine for 5 years. It's been the most liberating thing in the world. I'm talking to you guys for enlightenment. I just happen to be on that path, and at the same time, effect change in your world, but be vigilant. Don't make no mistake. This is the most autocratic and unpredictable regime. We have a true regime, and it is bizarre and
to the max.
Have you ever been to the motherland of Africa?
Yeah.
Can you talk about
it? Not central, but I've been in the northern coast. All of the countries on the northern coast: Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria. I played them all.
Can you talk about
Morocco?
I would love you to talk about it. I've actually tapped into my peers now, cats that are doing things in their own way musically, and a lot of them talk about going to like that northern part of Africa, and there's a guy playing a tambourine in the meter of 17, and it's just a daily thing. It's what they do. It's part. Can you talk about an inspiring musical moment that you either witnessed or had over in the motherland?
Well,
I mean, I just want to be clear for all those people out there. Civilization did not start with the Greeks and Romans. It started with the Africans and Chinese.
yeah. I don't know how they got the Swedish from Africa, but well, that's a whole other thing.
Anyway, I mean, because I think it's just, I've talked to, in 2016, Ahmad Jamal would not go to South Africa because there was apartheid. Stan Getz did because they said he was going to be able to play to a mixed race crowd, and they lied to him, so he ran off to a gym after he played his set and played with the locals. Bobby Hutcherson and Joe Chambers were there in Medina, learning all these chromatic scales. I just want to know the Meola. A lot of your songs have that flair. So I had a feeling that you must have gone there and played. But I just want you to talk about your experience. Just something that stands out.
Well, we went to Morocco 3 times, and definitely played with some Moroccan musicians. We even took a film crew from Rome and filmed the whole thing and made a DVD of it. So we got this film of us that whole week, walking through the bazaars and some intermingling of musicians, and me rehearsing them, screaming at them, and all kinds of stuff.
Is that still in the? Has that been shown the light of day? I need to see that immediately.
Yeah. Now a CD, the end of January of that, which was 10 years ago, is coming out.
CD of
not
DVD.
Of the show.
Yeah, wow.
No, the DVD's been out. That's been available for 10 years. It's called Moroccan Fantasia.
And you are just eviscerating people, screaming at them in English, and they have no idea what you're saying?
Well, I was with the percussionist from there, and and I was telling him to, tap your foot, never stop. And I got so mad with him because it was speeding up or slowing down, whatever, and not playing in time. The time is like, essential in a lot of what I do. So, I think at one time I yelled out, I said, "Don't ever stop tapping your foot ever again in your life," something to that effect. And people loved it. They said, "You got to get a T-shirt made with that," that slogan.
Just keep tapping your foot till the end of your life, till you stop breathing.
For the rest of your life, something to that effect. And people actually thought that was great, but it was just off the cuff, and it was in the middle of some heated rehearsal,
You just talk about what, if anything, it was inspiring to you, because here in the States, especially now, it's so formulaic. People are paying huge amounts of money to see, Journey, play the Steve Miller play their hits from 40 years ago. And you always strike me as somebody who's always stretching the boundary. Basically, you want to please people, but like you said, it's about composition, and more importantly, it's about what you like, what feels good to you. And over there, it's just, to me, there's a mystical quality to it. And I just would love you to talk about aside from you being a band leader, something just something organic musically that happened with the people there that was inspiring to you.
Yeah. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Very simple. Street music in Northern Africa. Anything that resonated with you that you either saw or played in, that had nothing to do with a concert?
I remember Tunisia. There were some really great percussionists, street percussionists. I remember seeing that. The darbuka is their instrument.
Yes.
They exist in Morocco too. I didn't quite get the level that I wanted, but they're there. They're there and they're good at what they do. It's kind of like flamenco guys in Spain. They're there and they're good at what they do, but when you get them out of their world, and you try to get them to expand, it's always a test to see who can flourish in the new world. You know, when you look back at what Paco did, it was very brave, let's say, for him to step out of his comfort zone. You know, for any of us, it would be brave to step out of a comfort zone. So, yeah, they exist there. And Egypt, I didn't find anyone. Algeria, I didn't happen to come across anyone, but they're there. You know, Algeria is huge. In fact, and they thought the Rolling Stones was coming. This kind of reception we got.
Dude,
it was crazy. Geez. It was just unbelievable. Wow. Whoever thought Algeria that would show up that many people with that kind of screaming and hysteria? But apparently there's more excitement for my music in other parts of the world than my own country. And Morocco is fantastic. Jesus. And that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to Europe. They really get what I do, I think a little bit more. And they're very accepting of new music, no problem, and I get a very good, sophisticated audience. And they made some good choices. I mean, I mix up my own compositions with the music of Piazzolla, who is also adored, that music in Europe. Totally foreign to the United States, and then I'll throw in some Beatles stuff, which I'm crazy about the Beatles, and I think they have a tremendous repertoire, and I do my own take on that. So the combination of original Piazzolla and Beatles was a smart thing to reach beyond the hardcore musician or guitarist fan that's going to come to the show. Where guys like Stern and Schofield will get a mix of musicians and guitar players coming, which is a very dwindling audience, dwindling horribly. They got more to worry about because the music's got to appeal to a wider crowd.
I just love. Do you think that you talked about Paco. I like the fact that you've actually haven't been in a bubble, like just pontificating about flamenco players in Spain. You've gone there and you like to push them outside of their comfort zone and then stretch them. Granted, you don't have the wonks showing up for these Schofield, guitar, these people that are obsessed with technique and chops and stuff that's dwindling. But do you see with younger cats more now on the bandstand that you can stretch them out more out of their comfort zone and they can respond, as opposed to maybe going back to 77 with Elegant Gypsy at that time? Do you think that there is hope in that sense, where the kids have the alacrity and the ability to stretch out more in different comfort zones?
Well, they're just starting out, so they'll do whatever you want, pretty much, good attitude.
Right. Well, I mean, when you get somebody who's been doing one thing for 10 years and then you're asking them to stretch out, give me a little silver lining.
I know my instincts are very sharp, and right away I could tell they could do it. Or there's other things that I could tell if they could do it musically right away in seconds, or if they can't.
Just on rhythm and instinct?
Rhythm, and my instinct about their ability to adapt to how they handle what was put in front of them. Their ability for sense of time, most are atrocious. Forget it. You won't get anywhere. You can't learn time. You go to school to learn harmony and every other aspect of music, but you can't learn feel in time. It's not taughtable. That word. Then I would know right away, if a guy can expand beyond. And then the more crucial thing over and above all of that is their attitude. If they got a great attitude, and I think they have the ability to do this, and it's worth the effort and time to put in to get them up to the level that enables them to be able to play within the context of what you're showing them. You know, it's if they don't have the right attitude, that could kill it right there, even if they do have the ability.
Al Di Meola, do you know how old the limbo is? The dance, the limbo.
Yeah, it's about. Just give me a second. 50. It's about 52 years old.
Right. I just found this tattered album, King Prince and the Islanders, and on the back here it says, I just find it fittingly that we're talking about it today. The white man, in order to keep the slaves under control, chained their hands and feet to an iron bar and kept them that way until they were sold for a handsome price. In order to keep their muscles from getting too stiff and to keep their minds from breaking, the slaves thought up a contest to see who could go under the iron bar without touching it. This kept them reasonably limber, and this is where the word limbo is derived from. So this goes back to the slave, the slave Trinidad. I mean, at 38, man, I'm just sort of, I agree with you. I'm not even waking up to the realization. I am liberated because of what I've been doing the last 5 years. But I am seeing for the first time that we are pushing against true nature in the sense that we are going to be regressing. We're not moving forward.
Yeah.
We're going to be pushing, and again, that's not our nature. So we're pushing against true nature, and there's going to be some very, very perverted, weird things and very destructive things that I think are going to happen. And you get reminded every day that.
It sounds very pessimistic, but I kind of agree with you.
I guess you know why I'm a little bit. I don't fear it, but I am very concerned because I read about this stuff like the limbo, and I realize that it's just been part of our cult. We've just never been able to shake our original sin in this country, and it's going to continue to haunt us for. And I mean, I have 2 young daughters, and I just want I want them to be living in a safe and relatively as peaceful as possible place, and I don't want to be living in a nuclear holocaust, and I just anyway I
got the same concerns.
Yeah, man. So I mean, but it's just before I let you go, is this a cell phone? Is this your cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to shoot you a text with a question after, but I just want to say I really enjoy talking to you, man, and I wish you the best on the Elegant tour, the Elegant Gypsy tour. You're going into the Deep South. I hope you can convert, get some people to wake up on your way down there, and we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch, man. It's great to talk to you.
All right, my pleasure, Jake. Nice talking to you again.
Hey, man. Cheers. All the best. Keep going.
All the best. Take care, man.
Peace,
Happy
man.
New Year to you.
You too, man. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Just heard from a legendary guitar player and a guy who's as he said, is always pushing the envelope and to make the right decisions. Al Di Meola, he will be on tour starting in February, 40-year anniversary of the Elegant Gypsy tour. And that's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. Always a pleasure. Thanks to Jim Parisi and everybody here at Power Talk. We'll be back tomorrow with a really heavy show. Mike Clark, great drummer, funk drummer, and jazz drummer. And then we'll be back with Steve Grossman as well. For now, we'll rejoin the Jim Parisi Show in progress.